Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. It's a bedtime story tonight. In my pajamas, showered, ready for bed. I took it slow today. Sat in my chair for most part of it, taking in lessons. Every time I got up, I just wanted to go back to the chair. And that's okay. I'm not even a napper. And today I actually laid down for an hour. And it was well needed. I think this set of days off that I had, the message was to get that rest in. But in the lessons, right, stirring that pot, and maybe it is some of these words. Oh my goodness, this word wonder that we got this week. And if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And each week we pick a word and we kind of delve into the word, and we spend the whole week looking at this word with different perspectives. Sometimes it's an experience or an adventure. Sometimes it's a lesson I picked up along the way, maybe a conversation, maybe a big pile of doo doo, right? And using these lessons in expressing sometimes through that evidence of our experiences. uh I was gonna say to prove that things can be accomplished in our feelings of insignificance, right? Those feelings where we feel we don't have anything to contribute, or, right, me hitting that live button, not quite sure of how the topic is going to come to the surface. I did take lessons this afternoon, but again, maybe it was in that idea of, right, taking it easy. Maybe it was an effort for me to actually show up today. And I actually, right, should have been crashed out for the most part of the day, maybe laying in bed. That's not the person that I am. But I do recognize those moments where I feel that I could use a few moments for myself, a few moments of relaxation, or just a few moments just to flake out. Today seemed exceptional in those moments, but I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to accept it for what it is, right? And let my curiosity, because again, in contemplation, in those few things that I got managed to get done, like my Christmas cards and a few dishes and the laundry on my days off, for the most part, I have been in contemplation, and maybe there's a little bit of energy munching in that, this word wonder that we got this week. And I thought today, I'd express a little bit of the experiences in my childhood, how I always took wonder in the things around me. I wasn't always able to express myself, right? Because growing up, there's a lot of why, and you can ask all you want, but lots of times, especially in my household, there was a lot of that, because I said so, or right, don't worry about it, it doesn't concern you. So lots of times these ideas and these questions and these things that make my eyes pop, that make me curious. Lots of times I was not able to expand on it, just because of my own limiting beliefs, maybe thinking that again, that I didn't matter, that I didn't feel like I had something to contribute, right? And the things that I found curious, that maybe they weren't important enough to give any time or consideration to. So, for the most part, unless I delved into it myself, and there were times that I did that where I found things curious, but unless I was with my father, right, he was a natural born teacher, and he just loved to expand in his I wasn't going to say in his knowledge, but maybe it was in that expression of how much knowledge he actually stored in that noggin of his. And he always took that time to explain things to us. Even if we weren't curious, we would stop in the middle of a drive and we'd get out, and he would express a thought or an understanding, or he'd tell a story in history and stuff. And my eyes would pop out of my head because I just found everything so wondrous. But being that shy child wrapped up in the game, those limiting beliefs, even if I didn't recognize, um, my limitations, I felt it, and it did slow me up in that movement, and it did make it so I didn't expand in my curiosities, right? Those things that caught my interest. And I'd have to say, that is a little bit unfortunate, because wonder is one of those magnificent words of movement. Wonder is what makes it, not just helps it, but makes it so that we can absorb information. Because if we're not interested in those conversations, if we're not interested in what's being expressed to us, we're not going to absorb any of it, right? The topics that I talk about, they are not widely expanded on it. They're for a small group, and I'm good with that, right? I am good with that. But because it's in my own lessons, and because now I'm just learning to delve into what interests me, I'm so grateful for this digital age, because there wouldn't have been any chance for me to be here to have these conversations if it weren't for this digital age. Remember what I said, lots of times I did find things curious, and I did want to expand in my understandings, but because a lot of the times, right, nobody was interested in investing those few minutes with me to help expand on my understanding. Or, right, maybe they thought I had limitations. Maybe they thought I just wasn't worth the effort. Maybe they just had their own busy lives and their own problems that they were wrapped up into, right? But I would have to say that that did cause me problems. And if it wasn't growing up as an adult, and I could say I can kick myself for, right, waking up to some of these ideas late into my 50s. But I did wake up to some of these ideas, and it's through my own choices, and it's through those things that I find wondrous. And what I find wondrous are those things that I found wondrous as a child and never got answers to, that never got expanded on. And, waking up to some more questions, and being in this digital age that I don't have to go to anybody to say, can you help me with this? Can you explain this to me? Right? Or to be able to move towards subjects that I was interested in, rather than expanding on subjects that somebody I was wanting to get close to was interested in. So I would delve into these topics. So, well, it was a trait that I learned from well, it is in my hypervigilance number one, but it was something that I expanded on when I was working in the bars and in the nightclubs, and in waitressing in restaurants. That the more knowledge that you have, right, the more you take interest in people and expand in that those are opportunities to have a little bit, to be able to get yourself into a conversation. Like, I don't like golf, right? But I know what a hole is, right? I know what an iron is. I know what a driver is. And sometimes it's just, right, it's that idea of you're not an expert on anything, right? But you know little things here and there. And sometimes it's those little things that help to get you into those conversations. And sometimes when you're able to get into those conversations, that's when you're able to expand because, right, everybody wants to talk and express those things that they love, those things that maybe they're not an absolute expert in, but they love it so much, right? They've gotten to know the rules of the game, right? They've gotten to know the little practices that lead you into being an expert, right? And if somebody finds that interesting, it is a door opener to a conversation, right? And that idea that I don't like golf, right? But if I met somebody cute in the bar, right? Cute, and I wanted to get to know them a little bit better, those would be openings to build on that conversations. Unfortunately, lots of people will take that as a high interest. And like I said, remember what I said, golf is not an interest in me, but right, I can chameleon enough to use that as a door opener to get close to somebody, right? Unless I'm genuine right away, right? And express, right, that's what all I know about golf, right? But sometimes you could just be a spectator in those conversations. Sometimes you could just be a spectator and keeping somebody company as they're playing golf and then just watching the game and then asking questions around you. But in this digital age, remember what I said. I'm grateful for this digital age because how fast could I become an expert by just Googling some of those questions, right? Some of those things that might help me to get close to somebody. And I'm just using golf as an example, but it's finding those commonalities with other people that help us to come out of those social shells that we have, right? And it's helped me to show up here every single day, even trusting in those conversations that I'm not an expert in, right? By any means am I an expert in them, but because I have these curious ideas, because I'm willing to ask those questions, because I'm willing to sit here and take in the lessons and mull things over and feel them out, right? That I'm able to show up here and maybe not show up here as the expert, right? But I can show up here with enough to get me into the conversation, right? That edge of being able to utilize some of those other skills that I have, right? To complement some of those lessons that I am picking up along the way. And even though I'm not an expert in them, right? It takes time and I'm coming in late into the game and I will come at it a little bit differently than a lot of people because I'm not that social person, right? Highly sensitive, little empathic, a little bit introverted, right? And because maybe it's a little bit of ADHD, maybe, right? In that hypervigilance that if I was taking in my lessons with a group of people that I would be so focused on what was going on around me that I wouldn't be able to sit here and fully comprehend or fully digest something that might, right, help me to be able to be maybe less hypervigilant in my surroundings, to be able to join in on a conversation where otherwise I might have been a little bit too shy, right? So it is in that wonder that we get to learn, that we get to experiment and experience, right? We get to experience um, those lessons that we get to feel into and resonate with if we want to resonate with it, right? But again, I have to say, this digital age saved my butt, right? Because, you know, being curious my entire life, all that curiosity was wrapped up in what I was curious about. Because, right, in all actuality, unless I was just sitting there as a spectator, I wasn't participating and making friends and being able to ask those questions because I was programmed and shut down, right? So, ooh, what's that all about? Ooh, what, right? Ooh, can I try that? No. Why? Because I said so, right? And not be able to get any lesson out of that except, right, to maybe follow direction, maybe not to be seen or not to be heard, to mind my place, right? Mind my manners. That doesn't concern me. And that just all fed into my limiting beliefs. So, when I came into the digital age, even the age that I came into, I was in my mid to late 50s when I started working on, no, I was in the beginning of my 50s when I started coming on to the computers. But even then, 50-year-olds were not working online. They were not playing around in social media. That was, for the younger generations. Now it's a different story. COVID took care of that, but we were directed. We were supposed to be able to pick up on that, right? COVID specifically, right? Because otherwise, grandparents would have been able to see their grandkids or their children who were on the other side of the countries because, right? COVID shut us down, but right? It was a way to make it so that we can stay connected and yet not have those ties that bind, right? Because sometimes ties do bind, but bind us in a way that we can't move properly, right? And sometimes again, these limiting beliefs that we grow up with and we take to school that make it so that, right, we are bound to our limiting beliefs, and we're bound in our hyper vigilant. And when that happens, we're just not open to be able to sit and absorb things properly. But we adapt, we conquer. I adapted, I conquer. I nurtured somehow that curiosity, and that digital age fed me the information that I was looking for, right? That I was needing, that probably all those questions that I ever, right, ever asked or was afraid to ask, I was now able to search out on my own, right? And I fed my curiosity. I fed that hunger for what I didn't know. And that wonder, just inch by inch by inch, got me from one lesson to the next lesson. And it has made it an enjoyable process. I wish I could have learned a little bit differently, because it is important for us to be social creatures. It truly is. And me showing up here fresh like a loaf of bread on these social media platforms possibly could be just that attempt to be social in a way that, right, I might not have actually even had the opportunity to do if I hadn't stumbled on to, right, social media and actually made some of those choices that went against my grain, right? It went against my grain. I would, right? I'm not socially um adaptable by choice, right? But these jobs that put the roof over my head, right? The tips that I I used to cover my butt because I was, right, a gambler, a video lottery terminal gambler, so that, I had to be really good in that influence and in that interest that I had in my customer, and in finding those commonalities that, you know, that each one of us has something in common with the person beside us, like even a total stranger. It's just a matter of whether we want to take that time, right? Do we want to nurture that curiosity, right? In this word that we have in wonder, just by saying, I wonder, I wonder. But, right, no, not to rely on other people to feed you those answers, right? And not to even trust yourself that you'll be able to sit through a whole lesson, right? Lots of times I take in lesson, but if it doesn't grab me right away, I'm gone. That doesn't mean I'm disinterested. I'm not going to come back to that subject. Maybe it was just the way it was presented to me. You know what I mean? Right? Finding that commonality, finding those things that we're good at. And it is in that practice. And it is in showing up every single day. And it is in the adapt and conquer. And it is in the wonder, right? Because if I didn't wonder, if I didn't question, if I didn't find curiosity, if I didn't, right, take in a lesson and go, hmm, let's delve into this a little bit deeper, right? Or I get this, or I never looked at it that way. These are all lessons. Wonder, wonder. And it's the only thing that can get us to move forward, isn't it? I'm somebody who's always moved forward with that stick with the bag on the end. You know what I do? I set goals and I move towards the goals. But some of those goals that I have require me to be a social person, right? So I show up here fresh like a loaf of bread, because without these type of conversations in these topics that I know that aren't going to be super relevant to a lot of people, but they're going to be super important to a few, right? And I've got to show up here fresh like a loaf of bread, with that curiosity, with that wonder, right? Because that evidence that I'm gonna, right, that I'm going to be, right, it's that evidence, that those lessons that I've taken in, that movement that I've chosen to take, that could be somebody's lifeline down the road, that could even, and more than likely, be my own lifeline. And I'm going to say not more than likely, 100%, right? I have no idea how I walked into it, but I walked into it, and right, it's in my choices whether or not to carry on. And I think the only reason that I keep carrying on is because I find this so curious. I find this so wondrous, right? Because I see the evidence, because as I move forward and as I take in lessons, it's just getting more wondrous. It's getting more more curious, right? And when I find that I just can't even get out of bed in the morning, when I'm not enjoying what I'm doing, when I'm not taken by surprise by a lesson that I thought probably, how could I have missed that one? I should have had that one 30 years ago, right? And find that curious, find that wondrous, right? That's the breadcrumbs, right? Those are the things that will entice me just to keep going. And if it's not enticing me anymore, well, maybe I hit that ceiling. Maybe this is where I can just relax a little bit and say, hey, I got it. But I know I'm not even close. And I suspect, right? I'm not even be close on my last breath, even if I do make it to 114. We talk about Cindy sets goals, right? I set my goal. I'm going to live to 114 years old. That's a good, healthy age. And I suspect that, I will keep that curiosity. And if I make it to that 114, when I make it to that 114 years old, right, I do believe I will still have that amazing trait of wonder, right? That wonder that has been with me since I was a little kid, but I've never been able to expand in that, right? And sometimes that's the way life works out, but sometimes you gotta wonder, right? Sometimes you gotta wonder and move towards what catches your curiosity. Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.